Hey there, thank you for tuning in to another special edition of The Root of All Success. Today, we've got a great special release for you where I was a guest on another podcast. This was the podcast by Joel Gandara, and he titled this episode, How to Turn a Job Loss into $1 Million Opportunity with the Real Jason Duncan. This was aired originally in August of 2024, and we're releasing it to you here, episode number 265 on The Root of All Success. Please go check out Joel's podcast. Just go to Spotify, iTunes, go somewhere and look up Joel Gandara, and you can listen to his show. But today, you get to hear him interview me on my show. Hope you enjoy.
All right, I'm here with the Real Jason Duncan. That's the realjasonduncan.com, right? Is there a fake one out there? What's going on?
Well, that's actually a funny story, but I actually own the fake Jason Duncan on Instagram as well. But there's a whole funny story as to why the real Jason Duncan became a thing.
So we'll get into who you are and all the awesome stuff that you're doing, but tell me that.
All right. Well, so back when I got on Instagram, this is years and years ago, the Jason Duncan by itself was already taken. And so I had to come up with something that would be different. And I didn't want underscores or dots or anything like that. So I'd known some other people just did the real in front of their name. So I thought, okay, I'll do that. So that was it. So it was completely innocent, had nothing to do with personal branding. It was just to get a name on Instagram. And then fast forward a few years, I tried to buy jasonduncan.com from the guy that owned it. And at the time, he was a musician and somewhere in Texas, and his domain literally pointed to a MySpace page. That's like how old this was, and he didn't have any content on the page. And so I reached out to him and said, "Hey, man, I'd like to buy this." I didn't really have a use for it. I just thought, I'd like to have my name, and he wouldn't sell it. I offered him $500. He still wouldn't sell it. So okay, well, again, I had no need for it. And then I started coaching people in 2017, 2018, and I was still running my company full time, and I was coaching on the side. And somebody on LinkedIn reached out to me and said, "Hey, I want to offer you a free personal branding assessment." I was like, "All right." So I get on this phone call with this lady out of New York. I don't even know who she is. She never followed up with me, but she's like did her homework. She showed up for that call. And she went over everything I would need to do for personal branding. And she, at the end of the day, she said, "You are the real Jason Duncan." And I said, "Okay, what do you mean?" And she goes, "No, that's you. That's your brand. That's what your Instagram says. And everything you do is very authentic. It's you. You're not putting on any airs. You're not trying to do anything weird. You just need to embrace it." And she already knew the jasonduncan.com thing that we tried to figure out. And she goes, "The real jasonduncan.com is available. You should buy that. You should use that. That should be you." I was like, "Okay." And then she never followed up. Like she created a brand out and then never followed up with me. And then so I have the real jasonduncan.com. I've got the real Jason Duncan on YouTube, on LinkedIn, on all the social platforms. And it's just become my personal brand. As you can see, the license plate, Real JD behind me. So it's me.
There's no going back. That's you.
That's all right, no going back.
Here's who we have here. Jason, the real Jason Duncan, TEDx speaker, mastermind leader, podcast host, best-selling author, entrepreneur, investor, interestingly enough, motorcyclist, and he's a business coach. Jason, you were an unemployed school teacher not that long ago, right? I mean, what, less than a decade ago?
No, it's been longer ago. Well, it was in 2011. So it's been longer than
a little over a decade. So tell us about, how'd you start out? Where were you born? Where'd you grow up?
Born and raised in Nashville, Tennessee. I'm one of the unicorns. Nobody in Nashville is from Nashville except my wife and me. Like we both grew up here, and we moved away a little bit, but this is where we're from. I did my first 13 years of like adult life career was in ministry. And so I was doing youth ministry my senior year of high school. I did it all through college, and then started preaching, became a senior minister, senior pastor, and did that up until 2006. And in 2006, I got completely, leading up to 2006, I got completely fed up with the institutional Western Christianity. I just couldn't stomach it anymore. I thought, this is not what Jesus was talking about. I can't do this. So I didn't leave my faith and I didn't leave my Savior, but I left the institutional church in 2006. And so for the next, decade or so, I just led a house church in our home and that type of thing. But when I left the institutional church as a pastor, as a minister, I was like, what am I going to do? Where can I go make a difference? Where can I use my gifts to make a difference? And I thought, I'm going to go teach school. So, Father God provided me a way to go back to college. I went and got a master's in education, started teaching school, and Joel, I fell in love with it. I absolutely loved it because I didn't have all the religious overtone crap. I didn't have the elders meetings to go to. I didn't have the people with money getting mad at me because I'd say something they didn't like. Like I didn't have to deal with all that crap that I had to deal with as a minister, but I was making a huge difference in the lives of about 180 kids a day. They were coming through my classroom, and I was
How old were these
developing.
kids?
Eighth grade American history is what I taught. So 13, 14 years old. And I coached soccer. I led a few clubs. I was head of the FCA. It was great. I was having a blast. Well, the Great Recession hits. And I was the last guy hired in the building, didn't have tenure. I was the number one teacher in the county in my subject area. I was a great teacher. I was highly certified, highly qualified and certified in history and physical education and administration. Like I could have been an administrator. And I thought I was going to be in it forever, but because of the Great Recession, they had to cut teaching positions in all the districts. And because of my tenure or lack thereof, I was on the chopping block. And so I didn't get my contract renewed for the following year. That ultimately is what pushed me into entrepreneurship. I said, okay, I'm going to do something on my own, started a company, and that's what led me to here.
It's amazing that I don't know that they'll ever change it, but it's too bad that because you were hired last, despite where you ranked potentially, what if they had a vote, have the students vote, have the parents vote, who should be out? You probably would have stayed. But anyway,
Yes,
that's a whole different topic. And the government bureaucracy and how things work. That's, oh well, what can we do? So what did it feel like that moment where you realized, man, I love what I do and I lost
oh,
my job?
it was terrible. That was in April of 2011. And, I had the rest of April and all of May to finish out the school year. And knowing that this was probably it. And I didn't know for sure. Like I thought, well, maybe I can get another teaching job. But knowing that that was probably it was absolutely gut wrenching. I left school that day and I went to my wife's office where she was working at the time. And unbeknownst to me, she had had a bad day that day. Of course, I didn't know. But so I walked in and she's like, "Oh, well, what are you doing here?" And I said, "Hey, well, I got some bad news to share." And I told her, and it's like all the blood runs from her face because she knew how much I love this thing. And so I went on home. She came home later, and it was like, what do we do? It wasn't crying and like scared. It was like, what do we do? It was like a shock to the system. And I first started applying for other teaching positions. I went to all the districts local. I mean, some as far as an hour away, but nobody was hiring. And every time that somebody would be hiring, it would be some weird thing that I didn't qualify for. It just didn't work. Then I thought, well, maybe I just need to go corporate. I'll just do corporate. And I was going through this interview process with this company, and I kept stringing them along because I didn't know if I really wanted to do it or not. I mean, they would have offered me the job, but I kept going, can we meet again in a couple of weeks so I can talk? So I just kept stringing them on. Well, in the background, I'd already started my company with a friend of mine like a year prior, but never with any intent that it was going to be anything other than just a hobby on the side.
And what was it?
It was so at the time when we first started the company, we were building an on-demand hydrogen generator for cars, which is nuts because I don't know anything about that. I was just the grunt, between me and my business partner, and like we were doing it in my shed in the backyard, and it was fun.
Wait, what does a car need hydrogen for?
So it'd be a replacement for
Fuel.
fuel. Yeah, be a replacement for fuel. So there are hydrogen cars now. I mean, there are not very many of them, and I think long term, it's a great technology. But like, I'm not a scientist. I'm not a science teacher. I don't know anything about this. So I had this thing, and so I was looking at that. You know what? I know how to sell. If I could sell something in the energy space, not this hydrogen thing, but if I could sell something, I could probably make a run at entrepreneurship. I think I could do this, even though I didn't really know what entrepreneurship was. I didn't understand it. Certainly didn't know how to spell it. Like I didn't understand it. And I'm ultimately made the decision. I'm going to give it a shot. I'm going to try this company. And I told my wife, I said, look, I'm going to try this summer, and I'm going to sell LED lighting to commercial buildings as a way to save energy, save money. Right. And if I can't make enough money, if I don't get any deals by August the 15th, then I'll literally go get a job somewhere else. August 15th was my last paycheck from the state. That was my last paycheck. August the 12th, I made a pitch of my life at a local regional hospital, and they bought it. And so it's like 3 days before my self-imposed deadline, I sold a $2.3 million project.
Wow. Were you brokering this? Were you buying the products? How'd you do
So
it?
I'd gone out and secured relationships with vendors who were manufacturers of lights. I'd gone and secured relationships with electricians who could install it. And then I was gonna do all the project management myself. I mean, it was nuts because the project was $2.3 million over 3 years. The first check I got was like 18 grand. So it wasn't like it was a slow build, but it ultimately was a $2.3 million project. But I remember the day that the container of LEDs showed up at the hospital.
It became real that day.
Well, it not only became real, but I completely didn't understand how the shipping thing worked. Like I assumed they were going to drop this they're going to drop this container, and we were just going to use that container over the next 6 to 8 weeks to do the installation. And the guy, like the truck driver said, "Hey, I'm going to go to lunch. I'll be back in 3 hours." I'm like, "Back in 3 hours?" He goes, "Yeah, I got to take the container back." I'm like,
Yeah,
"That's not how this is supposed to go." So I had to scramble. And I went to like they had Trojan labor or whatever, like these temp labor. And I just called them up and said, "Send me 3 or 4 guys like right now. And we got to unload this truck today."
Did you have a place to put them in the hospital?
Well, I didn't at first. I had to go into my my contact in the hospital and said, and of course I'm embarrassed. Like I thought I was going to have the container, and he goes, "Well, we've got this place in the basement, blah, blah, blah. You can put them in there." I mean, this is a container load. This is a tractor trailer going down the interstate full, side to side, top to bottom, front to back of boxes of LED lights. It was hundreds and hundreds of thousands of these things. And so I hired these temp labor guys to unload this truck, and I spent the next 3 or 4 hours unloading the truck. And I actually got the driver to he ended up kind of agreeing to leave it overnight. So we did it most of it that day, and then we finished up the next day. But I even had to call in a favor to get somebody because the transfer truck guy, the tractor part of it, he left. Like he just parked a trailer in the parking lot. Well, later that day, the hospital comes out and says, "Hey man, you got to move this." I'm like, "How am I going to move it? It's not even attached to anything." I had to call somebody with a tractor to come over and move this thing. Listen, dude, I haven't thought about this in a long time, Joel. This is actually fun to have a conversation about this, but I've got a picture of me standing with the back doors of that container open with me with my arms out and all these boxes. And it's like just young and dumb. And
It's a good thing you have that picture, because I think about building businesses in the past, and I wish I had pictures of certain things. That's great that you do. There's a fine line between being smart and thinking things through, or being a perfectionist, and maybe you wouldn't have launched that business because you didn't properly have the staff, you didn't have the warehouse, maybe you would have delayed it a little bit. I see this happen all the time. How'd you pull the trigger? You weren't fully prepared. Things weren't perfect. How'd you pull the trigger to get that going?
well, I'm a firm believer in fake it till you make it. And I'm not a guy that would say fake it in a way that lacks integrity. I'm not talking about lying. I'm not talking about doing things that are unethical. But I think you got to show up as if you were the person you want to be. And so when I when I was selling that project to this hospital, so the sales call that day on August the 12th, when I went in there. So I'll recount this story. Also a great story. So I'm sitting across the table. So if you can imagine a very long conference room table, and I'm sitting on one of the long sides, but at the end, and directly across from me is the VP of facilities. Next to me is my business partner. Across from him is the engineer for the hospital, and then 2 chairs down is the CFO for the hospital.
This is the original sales call.
This is the big one. This is the big one, right? And I didn't even know how to hook up my computer to a screen. I had an 11-inch white MacBook. If you remember those white plastic MacBooks, and it was sitting on the table between, like at the end of this conference table, and I was leaning over and clicking with that's it. I didn't have it hooked up to anything. I didn't have a clicker, and we're going through this sales, and I'm just living in the reality of I know what the hell I'm talking about, even though I knew enough, but I didn't know everything. And he stopped me. The VP stopped me about 2/3 of the way through the sales pitch, and he goes, "Can I ask you a question?" I said, "Sure." He goes, "Why wouldn't I do this?" Because it was such a compelling offer.
You're going to save them a ton of money.
Yeah, you're going to save $1 million a year or whatever. It's crazy. It's such a compelling offer. He's like, "Why wouldn't I do this?" And I said, "I don't know. Why wouldn't you?" And then he looked at me and he goes, "Has anybody ever told you no?" And I said, "No, sir, they haven't." Now I didn't tell him I've never asked anybody before, but I said, "No, I have. Nobody's ever told me no." And then he looks down the table at the CFO. Now the CFO had been colleagues with my business partner, and that's kind of how we had an in. That's the only way we would have even got opportunity to pitch this crazy idea.
Let's take a quick break to thank our amazing sponsors for making this podcast possible.
As an entrepreneur running multiple businesses, effective communication is critical for me. I've tried all kinds of outreach tools over the years, but none have compared to Dubb when it comes to driving real results, and that's DUBB. I was one of Dubb's first users. I think it was like 7 years ago when they first launched, and I've been a loyal customer ever since. Dubb has completely transformed my prospecting, my client communication strategy, and here's why. Dubb makes it simple to record personal video messages and share them across email, SMS, social media, and more. And this brings back the face-to-face connection that's missing from most digital outreach. And what happens is my prospects instantly feel more engaged when they can put my face to my name. I end up building a stronger relationship faster by incorporating these video messaging into my workflow. Dubb also provides tracking and analytics so I can see exactly who engages with my videos and how they respond to them. Their automation and their CRM features help me nurture leads and close more deals. I mean, that's what we're trying to do, right, as entrepreneurs. So after using Dubb for years, I absolutely can't recommend them enough. I mean, Ruben, those guys over there are phenomenal. I love Darius. They're all great guys. It's become an invaluable tool that I depend upon to run my businesses efficiently. And if you want to boost your outreach and see amazing results like I have, head over to therealjasonduncan.com/Dubb. That's DUBB. And you can try it completely for free. No credit card required. You get the first 50% off your first 2 months, by the way, if you use my link. You need to take your prospecting to the next level with video messaging from Dubb. They're my go-to sales communication platform for nearly 7 years and counting. Go to therealjasonduncan.com/Dubb. Try it for free, no credit card required, and you'll get 50% off your first 2 months as well.
Thanks for listening to our sponsors. Now, back to the show.
So the VP looks at the CFO. He goes, "Do you trust these guys?" Because he knew we didn't really know what we're doing. And he goes, "Yeah, I trust them." And he goes, "All right, write the man a check."
Man.
Like that was it. Like that. I didn't even finish the pitch.
That's amazing. Well, first of all, the pitch was good. It made sense. You're going to save him a ton of money. But a relationship is what opened that door. And how did you continue that business? Was it a matter of more relationships? Did hospitals save money? Now you had that as like your white paper and say, look, we're saving them this kind of money. What happened next?
Yeah, it's just a matter of it's small wins that you kind of parlay those into larger wins, and you string enough of those together and you become successful. And that's the way this works. And confidence is the memory of success. So when I succeed there, I go to the next deal and I'm a little more confident because I remember what it was like to succeed. And then I go to the next one. I was like, oh, that was awesome too. And I got to the point where it was almost like when I would pitch this, I would be incredulous if somebody didn't want to do it. Like, are you stupid or something? What? I don't understand why you wouldn't do this. You're going to save a gazillion dollars. Your lights are going to be better. And oh, by the way, this many years removed, Joel, between you and me, you don't even walk in a building today that doesn't have LED lights.
That's
so
right.
Think about the guys that said, no, this technology is not going to work. This is a fad. It's not going to work. What were they smoking? What
They spent extra years of higher electrical costs, right?
Yeah. So, it was a matter of, doing the proper case studies, like you said. And I committed to video pretty early. I don't know if it was my genius or just happenstance, but I hired a guy here in Nashville who happened to be a recording artist, and he's got lot of albums out now, but at the time he was just trying to make ends meet. And so he's doing videography work on the side. So we met, and his name was Corby. And I said, hey, Corby, I just want you to follow me around and go video these projects, like a before and after. And he ended up doing some amazing videos for us, where there was one great video where we were installing this hallway in the hospital. And he said, listen, I want you to walk down this hall just away from me. This is before we did any installation. Just walk all the way down and turn at the end of the hall. It's like, okay. So I did it. And then once we finished the install, he made me do the same walk, and I didn't know what he was doing. And then the video, man, it just switched like halfway with me down the hall, the before and after. It was killer. So we had great videos. We did lots of video testimonials, and had people always on video talking about how great it was to work with us. And it just worked. And of course, now that's like second nature to everybody. But we were doing that back in 2010, 11, 12, 13.
Well, you got in at a great time. That's when that technology was starting to get strong, and you didn't sleep on it. That's fantastic. So you started off on the right foot, got a big contract up front. How'd you grow this business, and what was that path to getting to eventually exiting without exiting? What were the next steps?
Well, so at that point I started getting more confident, and I thought, well, I'm going to call anybody and everybody. And so I was driving by, Gap has a huge distribution center local to where we live, and like the clothing store Gap, and they had a huge distribution center. And I'm driving, and I just Google Gap, the phone number. And there's no phone number for a distribution center. And so I'm like 6 pages deep into Google. I'm at a red light, just kind of scrolling through, and I found a phone number, and it was a local number because I could tell where it was from. And I just hit dial, and the guy picks up, says IT. Like I'd found an internal number to their IT department. And I said, you're going to think I'm nuts, but like, what is the electric bill at a place like that? And he hangs up on me. And so I call right back thinking, there's 100 people in that room. I'll just get a different guy. I did get a different guy, but I later found out there's only 2 people that man the IT room.
You got the other guy.
I got the other guy. And I went through the same thing, and he goes, hold on a minute. And he puts me on hold for what seemed like an eternity. He came back, and he said, you're going to need to talk to so-and-so. And I don't remember her name. We'll call her Diane. He goes, you need to talk to Diane, blah, blah, blah. And I said, okay, how do I get in touch with her? He goes, I'll transfer you. Okay. So he transfers me to Diane. I get her voicemail. Now, at the time, I was a don't leave a voicemail sales call kind of guy. Like that at the time, I would have been against that. But I thought, what do I have to lose? I'm just going to leave a voicemail. So I left a voicemail. And Joel, honestly, I completely forgot. 2 weeks passed, completely forgot I even did it. I didn't record it in a CRM or anything. And I get a phone call from a guy named Eric, and Eric said, hey, I'm with Gap, blah, blah, blah. I understand you could save us some money, blah, can we meet? It's like, okay. So we ended up, that was another several $1 million project that we did, here in the Nashville area. We ended up doing projects in New York for them. They had projects in Toronto. Like we ended up doing a lot of their North American distribution centers. And this was back, like, it was me, and my business partner didn't work in the business at all. He was an advisor at best. So it was me. And then I hired an assistant eventually who was helping me. And then I hired a sales guy who ended up not being worth anything. I had to fire him. And then I hired an operations person. And that's kind of how this whole thing started. And then eventually, of course, the company grew, and we had dozens and dozens of employees, but that's how it got started.
It always come, are these highlights, or did it always come this easy? Because those are 2 great stories of like big contracts.
Well, so those were the two. Those two actually came as a fairly easy. I mean, obviously, I made it sound a little easier than it actually was. There was a lot of time elapsed and all these things, but we had another major hospital contract where we were, and I'm not even going to mention their name. Because I hate them. Like they almost put me out of business, almost made me go bankrupt. But we got a contract to do 25 hospitals in their system across the country, and they were one of the largest. And they stiffed us on a 1.6 million. I forget. It was over $1 million. They stiffed us. They didn't pay. And
you'd already delivered?
Yeah, we'd done it, and they wouldn't pay. And so I ended up having to write a letter to the CEO, like track the CEO down. And just a personal letter to me to him said, look, I'm a small business guy. I've got 12 or 15 employees. We did this project for you. You're not paying us. I don't know what to do. And within a week, we got our payment on that.
Wow.
But then they did it again. They did it again. And like the guy that was running the project ended up getting fired. Like the employee on their side ended up getting fired. And we liked him. Like he was a good guy, but he ran it terribly. He ended up, we had a deal to where we were just going to source the lights for them. And they were going to have their individual hospitals install some of the projects on their own. Well, that was going to be even better for me because I don't have any labor in it. And I could mark the lights down a little bit and make as much money as I would have without having to manage a project.
Yeah.
Well, they brought in another company, Granger, and Granger ended up getting in there and souring the whole deal for everybody. And I remember one day I was sitting on a picnic table at a campground because I was camping with my wife and I'm trying to close this deal. And I remember hanging up the phone and I lost $1 million that day on the phone because that deal was done. And then Granger came in and lied. And there's another company I don't like. They came in and lied and they pulled a bunch of shenanigans. And had that deal gone through, I would have made $1 million in profit.
Man.
It was a huge deal, but I lost it because they lied. So yeah, it's not always easy. But.
So in your business life or personal life, that was a low point, obviously, because it's an opportunity cost, or you lost the ability to earn that. What's another low point? What's your lowest point, personal or business?
Dude, I have been the past year, let's say 10 months have been the worst in my entire life. I have gone through, and I'm not going to get into it because I haven't talked about it publicly yet, and I'm saving it for the time when the time is right. But I can give you a flavor of what's been happening. But I had a business that I ended up losing because of people lying to me and then running up debt. And then by the time I found out, it was too late. So the betrayal that happened with that, the fallout, the financial fallout of that, and it's still not over. Like I've got a lawsuit. I'm dealing with one of the, with one of the fallout of that's still ongoing. I've got another potential lawsuit that's still in the background. And dude, other than the fact that ultimately it's me, I own the company and I accept that responsibility, but like, I didn't do this, like, this wasn't me. And so I'm trying to deal with that. So we've had the last quarter of 2023, that probably the worst 90 days of my life. And I've been through some other bad stuff, but that was the worst. And then coming into 2024, just not knowing how this is going to work. It's been rough, but even that, like, this year has been a phenomenal year in the sense of growth and understanding and learning. I mean, my coaching business has thriving. It's going really well, really, in spite of the fact that I was fearful that one of my failures would be a thing that would undo my ability to be a coach. And as my
going to make you better.
Well, yeah, as my client. Well, and that's what my mentor told me. And I didn't believe him at first. He's like, dude, he goes, even if you have to file bankruptcy, which I haven't, like that's, who knows? I mean, who knows what's going to end up happening? But he's like, well, even if you do that, it's just going to make people more endeared to you because you're real. Like you built great multi-million-dollar companies and you've lost stuff. Like it's on both sides. And I didn't really believe him. But in December, we had a mastermind session at my office here in Nashville. And we didn't have a ton of my clients came to this particular one, but we had a handful, probably 8 or so of us. And I was just at emotionally a low point. And some of these guys know me. They're like, what's wrong? And I never go on the hot seat. I lead the hot seat. I don't go. Right. And they were like, you got to do this. And so I just puked on them. And we have a very strong NDA and everybody handles their stuff right. So I told them the whole story and they were like jaw dropped. They couldn't believe it. It's like, are you serious? Like, yeah, I can't. I mean, I don't know what to do. And rather than being repelled by it and wanting to run away, like, oh, this guy's a failure, it was more like, oh, well, he's human. Like you screwed up too. Okay. Well, yeah. Well, now you know what not to do that'll prevent me from having to go through that mess. So even though this last 10 or so months has been pretty hellish, I think Father God is putting together an amazing story that I can't wait to tell. And I will say this, starting, I think it was in October, the news dropped on me at the end of September, early October last year. I didn't really understand what was happening until like mid to late October. So late October, 1st of November in 2023, I just had the wherewithal to start picking up my cell phone about once every 2 or 3 days and videoing myself in the raw emotion of what was happening and documenting what's going on. And I've never, ever showed anybody any of these videos, but I have 50 videos that are probably 10 to 15 minutes a piece that are private, stuck away in my private YouTube channel. But at some point, I don't know what I'm going to do with them, but I thought, you've seen people stand on stage and say, well, I went bankrupt, or I had this thing, or my wife left me, or the kids hate me, or, they have all this, but now they're billionaires or 100 millionaires. Like they're doing great now, but we don't see what it was like when they were in the middle of it. We trust that it was terrible. But I thought, you know what? I'm going to be a victor in all this eventually. Like I've lost probably most of my net worth in the last 10 months. Like it's been that bad. So I'm going to be a victor eventually. And I want to be able to play a video of me yelling at God and screaming and cussing. Like this is, I want to say, so this is what it looks like, because the people hearing that are going to be like, I'm in the middle of this. This is what I'm dealing with too. And I'm going to show them that you can make it through. And so I'm going to make it through. It sucks, but I'm going to be all right.
Yeah. And it's only making a better story, really. Like you said, people are going to engage with that, understand it. And nobody wants to watch a movie where everything just goes well and perfect and better and better. Everybody wants to watch a movie where the hero has a problem and he has to overcome it. And I think you've already got a great story, but this is just going to add a whole new level and probably open up how many more people you get to impact. All right, so let's talk about exit without exiting. I sold my company. I told you before we started recording, I sold my company, but for the last 10 years before I sold it, I kind of exited. I have good mentors and coaches in the past who guided me toward that. And so I got to get myself out of the day-to-day, which is the part I didn't like, but I did like the income it made. So how do you help people? Because I didn't have a framework. I didn't have your system. I wish I would have. Tell us about that system.
Well, so this was back in probably 2018, 2018, moving into 2019. I had a business coach at the time who was awesome. His name was BJ, and BJ was really good. He was really the first business coach I ever hired, and he was helping me kind of manage the mindset of running a successful business. At that time, we had $1 million EBITDA. Things were going really well. Life was good. I was making a lot of money. Employees were doing great. I had a good team. We were doing projects all over the country. We had our problems, and that problem with that one hospital group that stiffed us on the money. I mean, that had just not even resolved, but that had kind of started coming out of that problem. So we were doing great. And I remember having a conversation with him, and he asked me something. He said, "What would you do? Like, if you knew everything if you could go back in time and you know everything you know now about running businesses, would you start this business again?" I was like, hell no, I wouldn't do this, because I don't care anything about lights. I don't care. The energy thing didn't really interest me. The lights, the technology doesn't really interest me.
It was a good way to make money.
It was a way to make money, and I needed it. I needed it to provide for my family, and it did just that. So he said, "Well, what would you do?" And I said, "Well, I don't know. I'd probably, run a motorcycle dealership, or I'd have a car dealership. I always liked cars my whole life." And he goes, "Well, okay. So what are you going to do with that? Like, what do you think?" And I said, "Well, let's just sell. Why don't we sell the business? It's doing great." And he's like, "Well, there's your problem. You can't sell it. Even though it's doing great financially, you're the center of the business. Everything runs through you, and it's not worth anything. For all the reasons you want to get out are the reasons nobody would want to buy."
Yeah.
And so the following year, I terminated my business partnership with the business partner that I had, and that was terrible. Up to that point, that was the worst experience I've gone through. But going through that, and at the end of that next year, we lost money, and I was like, "Whoa,
that's a first."
Why did we lose money? Well, it wasn't because the partner wasn't there. It was because I wasn't there. It was because I was dealing with potential lawsuits, fallout with the partnership, all that crap that was going on. That conversation with BJ about all this, like, what would you do otherwise, started replaying in my brains. Like, okay, so here's what happened. A $1 million company, like bottom line, a $1 million bottom line company, but 1 year of me just kind of loosely not keeping my eye on the ball, we lose money. That is dangerous. Nobody should go through this as an entrepreneur. This shouldn't be. So that's when I made a decision. I've got to figure out how to get out of the business without necessarily selling it, so that later when I do want to sell it, it'll be worth more money. And that's when I decided to do something I now refer to as exit without exiting. And
So
that's why I wrote
is
the
this
book.
the right person in place, the right people, the right systems? What is it? How does it work?
So what I've developed there's really 7 stages to this methodology that I put together. So stage 1 is basic delegation, and that's like you it doesn't matter what type of systems you put in place. If you don't yet first understand basic delegation and the mindset around that, you're not going to do it. So you've got to understand that. The second stage is assembling your support squad, making sure that you've got the support team in place that can handle all operations. Like you can't be opening and reading emails all day long. You can't be, working on projects that require your just mental effort to do stuff. Like you shouldn't be doing, to put it crassly, you shouldn't be doing $20 an hour work. That's not what you should be doing as an entrepreneur. So you've got to get your support squad to do that. Third stage of the XOS method is you've got to get your A team together. And your A team, these are the people that you mentioned, I think at some point in this conversation or before we started recording, about having your number 2 in place. This is not just your number 2. This is your number 2, 3, 4. These are your people that are your COO, your CFO, maybe even your CEO, however you structure things, that you can 100% rely on to make sure that your business is running in your absence the way that you would run it otherwise. And then stage 4 is when you get into started doing systems, right? This is where we start systematizing and optimizing things and automating things. Stage 5, this is when you start building a passive profits machine. This is when you start seeing, oh, okay, profits can come in without me being active in the business. 6 is exit without exiting. That's when you finally get to the place where you don't have to be there at all and it runs without you. And then stage 7, like you took 10 years before you hit stage 7. That's the exit. That's when you sell at the top peak value of your business. So that process, there's certainly lots of nuance around it, but that's what you have to do. That's what I did. And that's what I'm leading my clients to do. And it's so awesome to watch clients come to me working 60, 70 hours a week, ready to give up and quit. They hire me as a coach. They join the mastermind. And within 6 months, their hours are dropped by 30%. Revenue, some guys want more revenue, some guys don't care. I've seen guys like flatline the revenue, like, dude, I'm making enough money, I don't need to make any more money, but if I can drop 50 hours a week, I'm good. I'm good. So I love watching that happen.
What did you do with the extra time, you personally, when you kept making money, good business, but now you got some free time?
I started a coaching business. Like if you look at my history as a pastor and a school teacher, like this is what I should be doing. This is what God put me on the earth for. So now I've got this experience as a pastor. I've got this experience as a teacher. I've got this experience as an entrepreneur. And let's roll this all up into something where I can help people build their lives the way they want. And so I've helped people start and sell businesses. I've helped people, buy businesses. I've helped people go through terrible earnouts. I've helped people, start new divisions of their company. So as I got further disengaged from the daily operations of my business, I just invested more time into people. And then ultimately it turned into its own deal. Like I didn't know I was going to start a company necessarily to coach. I just wanted to do it. But now it's what I do full time and I love it.
I have a lot of friends who are business owners. In fact, almost all my friends are business owners, and I see a lot of them stressed out, and they only see an exit as the solution. I like what you're doing. I practiced it without. It would have been much better with your assistance, with your XOS system, with your guidance. It would have been way better. I probably would have exited at a better time. The whole thing would have worked out better. But man, I really recommend for business owners to talk to you. The best way to find you, therealjasonduncan.com, right? Is that a good starting point? And then from there, you said there's a mastermind, there's a book, there's coaching. And does the mastermind, just so I understand this right, we could express this to everyone, do you go with a group? Like if I want to exit without exiting, I hire your company, I hire you. Am I getting bits and pieces of you, or is there one-on-one coaching to come in and structure this for us? What are the options?
So the Exeter Club is the name of the mastermind, the Exeter Club. And so what we do, it's a group of business owners, both men and women. Generally speaking, these are businesses that have a minimum bottom line net of 300K or more. So we're dealing with companies that have employees. They've got some systems. Now, everybody's a little different, so that's not every single company, but we've got revenues that range from $1 million a year to $50 million a year, and all the way in between. But that's who's in. And then we have 2 Zoom calls a month, where one's a training call and one's a hot seat call. You're probably familiar with that with other masterminds. We do true hot seat calls. We do weekly coaching, office hours, so you can hop on. We've got 5 or 4 plus me. There's 4 other coaches, certified coaches in the program. One's an investment banker, one's an attorney, does M&A work, one's a financial coach, and one's a mindset coach. So every week you can hop in with one of those guys on an open Zoom call and ask any question you want. And then when you start, over the first 90 days, we have a pretty structured program. We do 5 Kickstart consultations with all of our new exiters. And so as the exiters come in, the first thing you're going to do is a business valuation. So you go through a full business valuation. We'll give you a report. You meet with the investment banker. He covers everything. You meet with a financial coach, go through your books, show you what you need to change. You're going to meet with the M&A attorney to talk about the legal implications of what you might have to do to prepare for a sale. You talk with the mindset coach about mentally preparing for that. And then my job as the last person you talk to in those 90 days is I'm going to put together an exiter plan for you. Like, how are we going to put this together? It's not an exit plan. It's an exiter plan, because not everybody wants to exit. So it may be, hey, I'm going to put a 5-year horizon on this thing. Well, in the next 5 years, let's increase your business value by 30 to 50%. Let's figure out that. And then at the end of the first year of membership, we do the valuation all over again. And you're going to see a 30% increase in your business valuation. We guarantee it. So that's how that goes. And I also do for select clients, I only take 5 of these at a time. I do one-on-one where I meet with them every single week, but that's in addition to the mastermind.
Sure. There was a guy who wanted to sell his car because it had too much mileage and it just wasn't worth anything. And he told his friend, and his friend says, no, you got to go see Mike. He'll set your odometer back. Right. And illegally. And he took it to Mike, and he set the odometer back, apparently. And these 2 guys ran into each other months later. He goes, hey, did you go to Mike? Did he set your mileage back? He goes, oh yeah, he did. He goes, good. Did you sell the car? And he goes, no, heck no. It has such low mileage now. Of course I'm going to keep it. It makes me think, when someone wants to sell their business because they're stressed out, but you can help them make it a nicer experience, I'm sure it's common that they probably don't want to sell it anymore at all, right? They'll just keep it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if it's throwing off good cash flow and you have systems set up, I mean, unless there's some other huge project that you need capital for, why would you do it? I mean, the tax advantages of holding it are certainly a lot better. And I'm not a tax advisor, but there are IRS guidelines about active hours in a business. If you're less than 750 active hours in that business, your income could be classified as passive with that business. Talk to your tax professional for specifics on that. But there's passive income opportunities through business ownership, where if you sell, you got capital gains that you've got to pay. There's a lot of taxes. And then I just saw today that the Harris campaign is proposing a 44% capital gains tax or something crazy. I mean, so selling a business might not be the best financial move for most people. It may be exit without exiting.
That's going to hit a lot of baby boomers who are 10,000 a day or retiring and selling their businesses. If they've got to sell and take a 44% capital gains, that's going to nail them.
Yep.
Hopefully they'll keep that in mind at the polls. All right. This is good. TheRealJasonDuncan.com. I'm going to make it a point to share this podcast personally with a lot of my friends, because I think they need to hear about this. Anything else?
Man, it's great. I know you're just getting this podcast going, but you're doing a great job. This is a good conversation. And I hope that you have a continued success and growth in this, because podcasting is a lot of fun. Even if nobody listens to it, it is so much fun to host these conversations.
Yeah, you get to make great relationships with amazing people. I love it.
Yeah.
All right, Jason, thank you very much. You bring a lot of value to a lot of people, and I hope to help you spread that word even more. Thanks a lot for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to another edition of The Root of All Success with the real Jason Duncan. If you've enjoyed this week's episode, visit therootofallsuccess.com to access the show notes and other helpful resources. Follow Jason on social media at The Real Jason Duncan. See you again next time here on The Root of All Success.
This podcast is a part of the C-Suite Radio Network. For more top business podcasts, visit c-suiteradio.com.